Hello everyone, welcome to Java Tutorials. My name is Kishore. In this video, we will discuss about the static variables and the instance variables. If you ask what all the variables we can create inside the class, we can create two types of variables inside the class. One is an instance variable and another is a static variable. What are instance variables means? Instance variables are those variables where every object will have their own copies of instance variables. But what are static variables? Static variables are those variables where all the objects will have single copy of static variables. To understand this, let me use a class called C and let me declare two variables. One is int x, which is an instance variable. The another name for object is an instance, and let me create one static variable y. What we will do is we will create two objects of C in the main method. I will write C1 equals to new C and C2 equals to new C. Then I will initialize the value of x to 50, C2 dot x to 60. Coming to the way we access the y variable. How do we access the y variable is static variables you can access without creating the object. It means you can access the static variable directly using the class name like this. Let me write unread. But you can also access the static variables using the object reference. Means you can write c1.y equals to 90, then c2.y equals to 80. This way also you can access. Please understand, you can change the static variable values, but whatever the value you change, that is common for all the objects. And I have created two objects. How many copies of x will be there? Each object will have its own copy of x. For two objects, two copies of x will be there. But for y, no matter how many objects you create, only one copy of y will be stored in the memory. So if I print value of x and value of y, how does it print? Let us observe. Let me print c1.x equals c1.x, then c2.x equals c2.x. Then we will print capital C.y equals capital C.y. Then c1.y equals c1.y. And lastly, c2.y equals c2.y. Please understand, you cannot access the x variable through the class name. It is going to give an error because you need to tell you are modifying which object of x, because there will be multiple copies of x. You need to use its reference variable, but you can use the class name for y because y is only one copy. Even if you use the reference, it doesn't matter. Let us run this program and see what is the output. The value of x is printing 50 for C1 and 60 for C2 because they have their own copies of x. But in case of y, it is not printing 100, 90, 80. It is printing only 80 for all the references because y is only one copy. When capital C dot y is 100, C1 dot y and C2 dot y is also 100. When you use C1 dot y equals to 90, then that 100 will be modified to 90. When you use C2 dot y equals to 80, then that 90 will be modified to 80. For that reason, when you use capital C dot y or reference variable dot y, their values will be same. Let us try to understand how this code works. You have created an object of C through the reference C1. It will have its own copy of X. And you are creating C2 object. It will have its own copy of X. Initially, their values will be 0. But what about Y? Y is going to be created before any object is created. It is not going to be part of the object. You can access through C1 or C2. When you write c1.x equals to 50, it is going to modify that x value to 50. When you write c2.x equals to 60, it is going to become 60. When you use capital C dot y equals to 100, what happens is y will be 0 initially before any object is created. It will have the initial value. Then when capital C dot y is executed, that 0 will become 100. Then the next line c1 dot y is going to change the same variable y. C1 dot y will change that 100 to 90. Then capital C2 dot y is going to change that value to 80. So at the end, when you print c1 dot x, this is going to be 50, this is going to be 60, and capital C dot y is going to be 80. Reference variable c1 dot y also will be 80. Reference variable c2 dot y also will be 80. So that is how the static variable works. It is going to have only one copy. But when to use static variable and when to use instance variables means when you want a common value, then you can always go for static variable, common value for all the objects. Like take an example of counter. You want to count how many objects you have created, and each time you create the object, you want to increment that counter. So no matter you access the counter from C1 or C2, it is going to be the same value. But you use instance variable whenever you want separate value for each object. It could be user ID, user name, user phone number. You should have separate values for each object. Such variables you can make it as instance variable. So that's it about the static variables and instance variables. See you in the next video. Thank you so much.